Hello and welcome back to the Stronghold. I'm the Magi and welcome to Midweek Magic, where I want you to grow your collection by winning 2 free Rare or Better ICRs each and every week. This week's Midweek Magic is gonna have us brawling in the streets of Thunder Junction like a bunch of bloody criminals. We are going to be building what is very commonly referred to as historic, but is now more formally just Brawl deck, in which we are going to be picking a commander from one of the new Outlaws of Thunder Junction eligible legendary creatures or planeswalkers, and building the 100 card Brawl deck around it. More broadly, instead of just focusing on one deck, I do have a deck list for you this week, but we are also going to be taking this opportunity to talk about how to build Brawl decks in both standard and the broader, formerly historic Brawl category. But before we get into all of that, this whole Midweek Magic thing has become a bit of a tradition here at the Stronghold, and it all started with our crack team of researchers discovering that we were the only YouTube channel making consistent, proactive, and timely Midweek Magic coverage. And here we are years later, and it appears that we're still the only ones out there doing it for the budget community. So be sure to subscribe to the Planeswalker Stronghold so that we can be here for you every chance we get. Now, what were we talking about? Oh yeah, right. You may not really know this, but around here you matter. That's right, not only do I depend on your viewership, but your opinions and your input matter to the direction that I want to take the channel. That's why I did a series of polls talking about I think it was 50-something eligible commanders for this week's event, and through it all, our boy Laughing Jasper ran away with a clear, decisive win. So he is going to be the focus of our specific discussion about deck tech today. But of course, in broader strokes, we are going to be talking about process and deck theory behind both standard and 100 card Brawl decks. And one thing that I like to do when I am building an Eternal format deck, whether that's for Explorer Historic or as today Historic Brawl, or I guess we can just call it Brawl at this point, I like to start with using the standard playable cards that people are more likely to have in their collection. And to do that for a Brawl deck, the natural extension is to build a standard Brawl deck. And that's what we're going to be starting with today. I have actually taken the liberty here of adding Laughing Jasper to our deck. And I actually searched up and added every card from Outlaws of Thunder Junction that included the phrase Outlaw. And that, along with our standard land base, has already given us 35 cards. The second thing I really want to do here is filter and add all of the Outlaws of Thunder Junctions that include the keyword crime in the applicable color combinations. And then begin looking at our colorless standard Brawl staples that we really kind of want in every single deck. Now, I know Celestis is getting ready to rotate, and Reckoner Bankbuster is not standard legal, but owning a copy of each of these cards is going to get a lot of use. I can still feel very, very comfortable recommending those options. Let's look at our colorless lands. Of course, we want Command Tower, and I guess we should grab Signet too, right? That would make perfect sense. There it is. All right. Next up, I like to take a few minutes and look hard at the colorless lands, those very flexible utility lands, things like that, that potentially have a home in every single Brawl deck. And once I feel like that is pretty well established as a universal base, for this particular deck, I want to go back through and look at the standard base commons and uncommons that include the key phrase target. First at creatures and then at your primarily instance. And this is going to get a lot of removal for us and help us commit a lot of crimes. And then finally, I want to look at the color combination specific lands in order to upgrade the mana base. Of course, as I'm doing this, I am looking at all the rarities, but I'm looking hardest as a budget deck and a budget builder at those rare lands that I know all of you are going to have. But of course, with all of this, you should be building according to your collection. Ultimately, that should give us a finished 60 card standard Brawl deck and a good basis to start moving forward in converting it into a historic or more presently known Brawl deck. As always, again, follow your collection, but by doing this extra step and making the standard Brawl deck first, we have focused the majority of the cards, 60% in actuality, to being things that are readily available in our standard collections, because we all end up with a standard collection on Arena, like it or not. That is the nature of the reward system presently used on Arena. And now let's convert this standard Brawl into a historic 100 card Brawl deck. And really, it's pretty simple when you think about it. Historic or just Brawl has 100 cards. Our standard Brawl base uses only 60. So in essence, we're talking about 40 cards. And when you realize that about 40% of those are going to be lands, you're really only talking about 24 or so cards as a difference here. And before you get too excited, I realize 24 cards could be a lot of wild cards for anyone. And not to worry, that's not the direction we're going to take here. If only we had a short list of perhaps colorless cards that fit very nicely into our historic Brawl decks over and over and over again, the investment would continue to pay dividends for us. Well, would you look at that? We, in fact, do have a short list of about 20 cards or so that fit that build. These are all colorless cards that very nicely fit into Brawl decks, and these are things I highly recommend adding, if need be, over time to your Brawl collection. Cards like Ornithopter Paradise, Solemn Simulacrum, both add mana fixing, acceleration, and in some cases, creature body to the board. Flame of the West, for instance, is just a very versatile equipment that's going to do a lot of work for you in virtually any deck. Arcane Signet, of course, is a thing that we talked about in the standard Brawl deck as well. Cold Steel Heart, Guardian Idol, Mind Stone, Mishra's Bauble. All of these things basically add fundamentals like card draw and mana ramp and color fixing to your deck. Of course, we also have some lands going on in here. Thran Portal, we talked about in the standard portion of the conversation. Captivating Crossroads, more specifically, fits here. Command Tower, of course, is a staple. Fabled Passage gives you some mana fixing in every single two-color deck that you could be playing in Eternal. Great Hall of the Citadel is very nice, particularly for Brawl. It can do a lot of work for you in fixing. And of course, Plaza of Heroes was one of those cards that we talked about for Standard as well. And behold, through the power of editing, I have reviewed and added all of those cards to the deck, updated the mana base to be more in line with a Brawl deck as opposed to a 60 card deck. And just like that, we are only 15 cards off of a completed deck. So now what? Because at its heart, this is a tribal-based deck, there are a few additional colorless cards that I think are well worth considering. The first is a common 1-drop 1/1 universal automation, and the moral of this story is it has changeling, so it simultaneously has every creature type. So while it is not specifically an outlaw, as that is a super type and not a creature type, it is in fact an assassin, a mercenary, a pirate, a rogue, and a warlock all at the same time. The same can be said for another common 3-mana 2/2 faceless agent. The interesting thing here is when it ETBs, you seek a creature card of the most prevalent creature type in your library. For my particular version of the deck, that is going to be Rogue. And then the last card that I think is a strong consideration here is another 3-mana 2/2. This one at uncommon, Bloodline Pretender. When it ETBs, you choose a creature type. Whenever another creature of the chosen type enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on Bloodline Pretender. And again, don't forget, you can't name Outlaw, you have to name one of the subtypes that contributes to Outlaw. There is also Birthing Boughs, a 3-mana artifact that allows you to pay 4 and tap it to create a 2/2 colorless shapeshifter creature token with Changeling. This one is a little less versatile as it is not a creature in its own right. Oftentimes, paying 7 mana to start investing in 2/2s is not necessarily where you want to be, but if you feel strongly about these tribal archetypes, it might be a strong consideration for certain versions of that type of deck. Now, to continue the creature tribal specific sort of thing, mostly because our base creature count on the standard Brawl deck was a little on the low side, I want to focus primarily for this deck on creatures, but of course if you have other archetypes or synergies going on in your deck, just looking at those and adding additional cards is really what you want to do. Specifically, if we are looking at rogues, don't forget you have Scoundrel and Tunneler available in your Alchemy starter decks. Ona's Blackguard is also one of the best rogue cards ever printed. Well worth an uncommon, as each additional rogue that comes into play after her will get a +1/+1 counter. And whenever a creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it deals combat damage to a player, that player discards a card. So very strong stuff there. My favorite of the outlaw sub-creature types has got to be pirates. And my original standard version of the Brawl deck is a little light on pirates. So I would strongly consider something like Kitesail Freebooter or Fanatical Firebrand, as not only are these both relevant pirate creature types, but they both help you commit crimes. The Freebooter gets to take a card out of your opponent's hand, and the Firebrand can be sacrificed to deal a single point of damage to target creature or player. Forerunner of the Coalition, on the other hand, is better for a deck that is heavier on pirates, as it allows you on ETB to search up another pirate card, reveal it, shuffle your library, and put it on top. Once it's in play, whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control that is a pirate, each opponent loses 1 life. All very strong investments for a pirate at heart like me. Warlock presented some interesting options, in particular the Hourglass Coven, as well as Cursebound Witch, both alchemy legal cards or now historic. Both offer spellbook options, but to be honest, I didn't find those sub-options within the spellbook to really contribute to either the outlaw concept or the committing crimes. The exception being the Hourglass Coven does allow you to draft additional warlocks, so I guess that technically is something. And in the end, by applying these techniques, you're pretty easily able to come up with a 100-card deck using primarily cards that you already have and just selectively using a few wildcards. I think overall for this account, I'm probably only looking at spending like one uncommon wildcard, but that is also due to the fact that I have already made investments into some of those core cards that we talked about earlier. And hey, do me a favor, take just a minute, comment down below, let me know, who did you play? How did it go for you? And hey, just in case you didn't catch all that, Matt would like you to know that the deck list that we discussed in this video is going to have a link down in the doobly-doo to take you over to Aetherhub, along with a link to any other alternative lists that you might wish to consider. He only asks that you give it a little thumbs up when you're over there checking out the deck list. And I plan on live playing this event on Wednesday at 11 a.m. over on my Twitch channel, so definitely stop in and check it out. Because the Stronghold is so much more than just a YouTube channel, and you can find links to all of our other social media outlets in our profile. Because at the end of the day, we're all budget players. And as a community, we're stronger together. So like, comment, subscribe, follow, do all those things to show a little love. It's appreciated more than you know.